Let's talk about data versus dogma. Hey guys, it's John here in the studio on a fabulously cold morning. It is 19 degrees outside here in Akron, Ohio, and I am sitting here with a mug of John's Joe coffee, loving my life this morning. If you are a coffee or a tea drinker and you'd like to help this channel grow, right below this video is a link to John's Joe Coffee where you can get your coffee and tea there. If you're going to drink it anyway, if you want to have really high quality coffee and tea and help this channel grow, then get your coffee there. Just a quick note, all these coffees are fresh roasted the day they are shipped. So you will get the freshest coffee you possibly can. And that's just my quick commercial for John's Show Coffee. I wanted to talk about this concept of data versus dogma. Now, many of you know I am a huge fan of Dan McClellan. I love his work. I'm fascinated by his work. I don't believe he's infallible. I don't believe anybody's infallible. I don't think I'm infallible. I think we all have our own journey to go on. Oftentimes, when you look at Bible scholars, they're trying to prove a point. They're trying to prove Christianity. They're trying to prove their own personal theologies. And when you look at people like Wes Huff, who just debated Billy Carson, and Dan McClellan, and you've got these scholars who are talking about their data. Oftentimes, you have to look at what is their objective of their data. You know, data is not absolute. People like to think that it's infallible, like to think that it's absolute, but data is ever changing. I recently did a video on the gospel of Jesus's wife. Half of the scholars believe it's a fraud and a forgery, and half believe that it's a contemporary piece from the time. There is no overarching 100% consensus on any of it. And why is this? Because the data doesn't is and why is this? Because the data is inconclusive. When they carbon dated it, it dated to sometime before Jeshua would have been born, and then it also dates to the 600 range, and then another dating took it out to the 900 range. So the data is inconclusive unless you have a theological belief about it. And so when someone comes at the data and says, well, look, this batch of data matches what I believe being the dogma, that ends up creating their scholarly work is based upon their belief. And so that is very interesting. Wes Huff, very interestingly enough, I thought was great in the interview with Billy Carson, but when I watch Wes Huff on the other Christian channels that are very excited to have Wes Huff on right now, he's very much into the mindset of proving his Christianity to be right. And the last interview I saw him on was on a channel that the bulk of his channel was based upon the idea of proving Muslims wrong and debating Muslims and trying to bring them to Christianity. So that theological idea is he is exploring his Christianity through his scholarly work, but because of the schism there, the dogma and the data, his data is skewed towards Christianity being the one and only way. That's interesting. Dan McClellan, who like I said, I'm big fan. I share his videos all the time because I like that he's much more clean about the data. But in Dan's work, sometimes the data itself becomes the infallible piece of dogma. You know, science itself is a dogma because all of the empirical evidence found in the world is found in an illusion of belief. You know, we look at this world, it is literally atomic energy in motion. And when you look at this concept of empirical evidence being infallible, you're just looking at another religion. You're looking at another idea, another theology. My theology is that the data is infallible and my deity is the data. But the reality of it is that the data changes. You know, for many, many years, everyone was like, yes, the Big Bang is the truth. The Big Bang is the truth. They send up the James Webb Telescope. One of the first things comes back says, well, it might not be true. So things are always in motion, things are always moving. The reality of it is that it only matters what is happening in the now. These debates over what the past meanings are are really ridiculous because no one's living back there now, and we don't know exactly what all these individual authors were saying or doing. And scholars will tell you that Genesis 1 is apologizing for Genesis 2, right? So they know that those Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 are written by two different people. When you look at the data, you cannot take it as infallible, which is what religions do in their dogma. They take their dogma as infallible. And you look at Christians fighting back, like that one channel I mentioned, who their whole channel is based upon debating Muslims, right? Because why do they need to debate? Because their dogma says that my way is the right way, and I'm going to debate you to knock you out. Now, a Christian versus a Muslim in a debate, the Muslims have one book, and the Christians have the Bible, which is their one book, but they have all this theologic ideas that came along after that they're tapping into. It's like the Trinity. That's a later addition. It's not necessarily a original text in the Bible, right? We know that, like, the rapture is not in the Bible. There's so many things that are discussed in theology, depending on which branch of Christianity you're in, that they have all these resources of text, but that does not make the text infallible. That does not make the text perfect. And one of the things I do like that Dan McClellan really says is talks about the Bible's not univocal, and it really cannot be taken as an infallible document. So when you look at the text of any religion, you have to understand whoever's reading that text is reading it from their own dogmatic view. And scientists do the same thing. Now, if you think about what I said earlier, all empirical evidence is found in the illusion of belief. When a scientist goes to prove a theory, what is a theory? A theory is a belief. So they're putting a belief, they're looking for the evidence of their theory. They're looking for their belief. And so when you look at this concept of data over dogma, they're all dogma because they're all just belief. They're all just trying to figure out things. And of course, you know, the the Bible says, as a man thinketh, so is he, right? The Buddha says, what you think, you become. You create your world. The Bhagavad Gita says, thought by thought, you forge your destiny. Shakespeare said, there's nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. When you look at all of these things that are being said by all of these different people, they're all saying our thoughts are creating our experience. Well, our thoughts are our beliefs. Our beliefs are the dogma. A scientist can have just as much of a dogma as a Christian person or a Muslim person or a Buddhist person, but it always comes back to the argument. Why are they arguing? The arguments and the debates are not about the infallibility of their stuff like they claim that it is. What it's about is it's about being right. The reason they need to argue against someone else is to prove their theory right, to prove their belief right. One of those things that's happening, like right now, after this aftermath of the disastrous Billy Carson debate, is the people who have believed Billy Carson's dogma are getting angry. The point of this is that the dogma that they're all putting faith in and believing in is just the chatter that they're arguing about. But when you step back and you look at it all, none of them are being loving. None of them are doing what their religions have told them to be. None of them are saying, love one another. Even the Wes Huff and this guy who wants to fight Muslims on his channel, they're not loving one another. They're attacking. They're trying to prove themselves right as opposed to actually living their own spirituality. You know, when you look at the science, they talk about debunking this and debunking that and debunking this and debunking that. When did they actually say, okay, we're going to create a better world? They haven't. They've just said, "We're gonna look at the past, and we're gonna debate, and we're gonna argue, and we're gonna say this is what we believe, and this is the outcome of this." You know, there are many scientists who try to keep themselves out of it, but they always go into it with a theory. They always go into it with a theory that this is the way the world is, and that theory is their belief, and that belief is their dogma, and so it ends up becoming this argument of dogmas rather than a debate on data, because as they start to bring out their data and they start to talk about their data, all they're looking at is data from texts that were written 2,000 years ago or more. And those people weren't infallible either. And they're not only that, these texts are compilations of texts that come from multiple people, multiple sources. The only idea that it can be the word of God and infallible is what some people claim. But I can go in there and show you tons and tons and tons of inconsistencies and flaws. You know, 2 versions of Judas's death, 3 versions of the walking on the water, vengeful and jealous God, or God is love. Which is it? There's so many contradictions in there, but it's a matter of understanding that none of it really matters. What are you doing now? It's the only moment you're ever conscious is the present moment. And that no matter what the data says, no matter what the dogma says, what are you doing now? What's the fruit of your belief? Is the fruit of your belief loving, caring, you know, compassionate? Are you helping your fellow person, your human, come up to another level of their own comfort in life? Are you being the teachings that all of them say? You can find love in all religions, right? I think scientists themselves would love to see a beautiful world, but if they're just arguing their data or they're just arguing their dogma, they're missing the point. The present moment is the moment of creation. It's the moment where we get to create the world we want. It's the moment we have thought, word, need. It's the only moment we have thought, word, need. The past is just a collection of present moment memories, and the future is just waiting for us to create it. And in this moment of now, we have to come back to that space of realizing that the data or the dogma are both dogma. The data is dogma nowadays. And when you come at it from that perspective, you say, okay, does it really matter? No, it does not matter. It only matters the fruit of your belief now. Are you being loving? Are you being caring? Are you being a person who is putting beauty into the world as opposed to putting up another argument to make sure that your data or your dogma is right? That's all that's going on with these debates between science and spirituality. They're just creating arguments and debates. Well, why don't we come back to just being here in the now and just create a loving world? And so when I look at this concept of data versus dogma, I think they're all dogma. They're all coming from belief of some kind. And that belief of some kind is creating more and more struggle. So when you look at your own spirituality, why not ask yourself, what is the fruit of my belief? What is coming from me? Am I being loving? Am I being caring? Or am I being argumentative? And if you're being argumentative to prove that your theory is right, then why do you feel the need to sway somebody else to your belief? Why do you feel that need? Is it because you're afraid they're not going to make it with you? That's because you're afraid. Are you afraid that you could be wrong? That's a possibility too. Is it just to say, look, I know a secret that you don't know? That's a possibility too. You know, 70% of the world don't claim to be Christians. So why are Christians saying that we all have to become Christians and believe it? And why are they arguing that their very flawed document is infallible and univocal? You know, scientists will tell you one thing about this data, but when they dive into the data is never 100% conclusive. They'll say it is, but then 10, 20 years later, they'll do another experiment and it'll be completely wrong. So it comes back to, who are you now? It doesn't matter about the data or the dogma. It only matters on who you are now. What are you being? The rest of it is all just information, and it's information coming from the belief of the people spewing the information. Go be love in the world. Create the loving world that we want in the here and now. It's the only moment you can. And that's my thought on this. You guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. See ya. Bye.